Hi Naby, thanks very much for having me on the show.
I want to give a big shout out to Dynamic Business for supporting us and supporting Hustle Chat as well. I've been very excited to have this conversation with you, Damien, and I know we've all met quite recently and we just like clicked. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and what was that like?
Cool. Well, yeah, I suppose my childhood was probably pretty typical in Australian. Victorian, so glad to not be in Victoria at the moment, but born and raised in country Victoria. My family's originally from sort of Melbourne, around Camberwell, Hawthorn area. But yeah, it was awesome growing up in the farm. My parents sort of moved out there to get a hobby farm. So yeah, we ate really well. They were always very focused on good food and organic things. Back in the 70s. So yeah, I think I was brought up very, very well. No sort of issues with anything. Wide open spaces, the good old days of, disappearing for an afternoon on your push bike when you're 10 years old, nice. and thinking anything about it, playing in the bush and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I think overall very balanced sort of upbringing with a couple of siblings. But when it comes to the entrepreneurial side of things, I think I was somewhat a little bit affected by my grandfather. So he was quite an entrepreneur and he had a number of businesses and things like that. And yeah, I think that sort of rubbed off, or there's some certain DNA perhaps in there as well. Because yeah, at quite a young age, I was working sort of with my hands building things. I think my first job was at the local toy store putting push bikes together when I was probably like still at primary school. And I can't remember if my parents encouraged me to do that. But yeah, it was very early on that I was sort of working in business and getting paid, getting my own money, which was really exciting. And I think that as a young kid is just something that's, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of nurture there. I'm not quite sure. But from very early on, as far as I can remember, I was interested in working for myself, getting paid and getting the fun and satisfaction of doing something. And my parents brought me a computer when I was quite young. It was one of the first IBMs, the PS2, 286. So I was probably the only kid in the entire neighborhood who had a computer, good old screeching modems. And I sort of joined, those early days of having that wonderful experience of crossing from analog to digital. And just as a kid, I was just addicted to it straight away. And so it wasn't long before I was building my own computers. And before I was 18, I was already selling to the local Department of Natural Resources in Victoria. So I was building the computers, importing all the components, and that was my first business called Squeeze Software.
Wow. And when was this?
This would have been in like 94, 95. So yeah, pretty much straight out of high school, I was already selling and building businesses for computers, for local farmers, and then selling to like a government department.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, I ended up moving back to Melbourne, going to RMIT to look at electronic engineering. And I was sort of working in a local computer store up there as well, building computers. So I think from there, I've always sort of loved business and loved sort of doing stuff myself. And yeah, the other thing we loved was travel. So sort of after that, I sort of traveled and then contracted. So I didn't really do startups again after my initial businesses until sort of probably when I was in my 30s.
Wow. And I know you have a whole range of businesses, and as it is, it's hard to run one business, and I can vouch for that. How do you balance between running your number of different ventures? So what are some of the things that you're involved in at the moment?
Yeah, so there's always lots of different things going on. I think I've got a mild case of ADHD, or at least it's undiagnosed. So Yeah, look, I've had a few businesses on and off over the years. Most of them have been quite good. But yeah, right now, sort of the core business I have that sort of has good revenue is a company called Adaptive Media. So we view ourselves as a boutique startup studio. So we specialized in building MVPs for startups, and then we've sort of gone more into innovative corporates. So yeah, a little bit of background into that was a lot of my time in my career was spent contracting in the UK. And I managed to get a job at the BBC, a contract there, and then over a long time in a corporate role at Virgin Media, where I was able to sort of work quite a little bit with mobiles and the start of mobile apps. I think we built the first ever mobile app for Virgin. And then we went on to do live stream video and also a music app or music website. So when I came back to Australia, I set up that company, Adaptive Media. It was all going to be about dedicated to video streaming, music, and any type of mobile app that related to that. But I've also expanded that out into CTO as a service and board advisory. And we've started to do sort of like an equity play, and that's where things sort of get wider again. So for some of the businesses that we develop for, we also take an equity play and become their like technology partner. And we can build a dedicated team of say 3 or 5 engineers, get the MVP out, get it to production, and then keep supporting them. And then I even help to bring in a CTO, build out the internal resource team as well, and be able to deliver hopefully from an idea stage to a production, revenue earning app. And then ultimately I start to get this portfolio of businesses where I've either invested in directly or partly. So yeah, that's an example of my main one. I also have recently acquired a company called Aura Eve, which was like an e-commerce site. So I want to sort of play around with e-com and Shopify, and some girls did an amazing job in the Sunshine Coast, and they needed to sell, and we ended up acquiring that company. So that's in the family. It's under health and fitness. And then obviously PUML Better Health, which we're going to talk about today, was really a side project.
On that note, how do you pronounce? Do you say PUML or is it PUML? What's the way to pronounce the platform?
The official title is PUML Better Health, but then anyone who comes into the fold just calls it PUML.
And is there a story behind PUML, or does it mean anything?
Yeah, so it stands, well, apart from wanting a 4-letter domain, which is also that stands for personal units and movement levels. So ultimately, the platform is trying to do 2 things. It's trying to understand your health data and lock that away as a unit of data. So going for a run could be a unit of data, going to the gym could be a unit of data, doing a DEXA scan or a heart rate is a unit of data. And then your movement levels is how you're moving, so how often you're being active and things like that. So we're collecting a lot of data points, and we're hoping to use those data points for predictive diagnosis of like lifestyle diseases like diabetes and heart disease and things like that.
Yeah, and we'll go and dive a little bit deeper into the platform. But I want to touch a little bit about the technology that the platform is built on. And because you come from an engineering background, it would be good for our users to understand why certain technologies are used for certain applications. And there are a lot of trendy words like machine learning and AI and blockchain, and all of these words get thrown around. And you're probably one of those people who could simplify the reason behind choosing a certain technology to build a solution to solve a problem. So tell us a little bit about blockchain and how the platform is built and why those decisions were made.
Yeah, well, maybe it's good to sort of understand the platform or the purpose of the platform first, to understand why why that particular technology was chosen. So I think at a very high level, we're trying to gamify health and fitness, and we're doing that for both corporates and people in general. And there's a level of two verticals, I'd say, that are interesting. So one is, how do you incentivize people? So there's an incentivification piece. And then there's also a data piece, which is every time you do something healthy, you're collecting data. So those two sort of pillars have ultimately helped us to make the decision to build on blockchain and to do what's basically called a DApp, which is a decentralized application, rather than, I think historically with a lot of the work we've done and a lot of the apps we've done, they're always centralized, which means you have a typical API. The API will talk to a database, the servers and the platform will be hosted in a centralized cloud scenario like Amazon, AWS, whereas this platform is a hybrid of that solution. So it includes both the centralized and the decentralized areas in the technology. Now, the reason for doing that is one, when you look into blockchain and you start to have a think about what the capability is, the amazing thing is you can very securely protect data. Because ultimately what it is you're making a carbon copy of something several times over and over and over and over again. And there's a lot of security with transparency. And so when you record that detail in so many places, it's very hard to change. So we use this term immutable to show that, it's protected. So unlike a bank or a centralized system that can be hacked and modified, it's a lot harder to modify any transactions on the blockchain. And I got into crypto in 2011, so right sort of at the start, and I was developing my first startup at the time. And what I loved about Bitcoin, which is the first blockchain product, was it was fully self-organizing and there was no centralized system to it. No one could control it. It's built entirely on mathematics and encryption. And I think a tech person and engineer, it's very exciting when you see this new technology. I think as a kid, the passion I had for the internet as a child and learning about computers and technology is sort of like evolved into blockchain and what the future of that particular protocol is. And I think it's highly underestimated at the moment because of a lot of confusion and a lot of, unregulation and things like that. But ultimately, if you think of it as, the dot-com days where, there was a lot of big companies around, but ultimately the internet itself was what brought the change. And it was the apps that were on top of the internet that really, succeeded and are still around today. So we're going to be viewed as an app that's built on a protocol. So one of those protocols, a particular blockchain, the same as you might choose Amazon AWS or you might choose Microsoft Azure. In the same way, most apps in the future will have an element of decentralization and they'll be built on one of those protocols. So,
I think a lot of people think blockchain is Bitcoin or crypto, not fully realizing. I'm not talking about the tech peeps in our community, just the general public, the understanding of blockchain and the use cases and the capabilities that it can have, and especially for something like personalized data. Where security is a really important aspect of collecting that data, how the data is handled, and then how that data is used after that and where it goes, and having that transparency is absolutely critical. So I love it. I absolutely love it. I want to go a little bit into well-being around the platform and gamification of physical health, incentivizing people to take steps and get moving, and what is the benefit of these movements? Why well-being? Out of everything that you can do in your whole life, why did you choose to go down this path?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because it's one that I think has sort of touched me at a number of times. I think when I was quite young, I had the original idea. I got the domain as well, which was called Our Vita, Our Life in Italian, and
Yeah.
the idea was, can you track your entire life? From like a youth all the way up, I had this sort of fascination about data and the change in your body and things like that. I never got very far with developing that particular idea, but it was sort of still there. The first startup I did with the head of lastminute.com in the UK, and it was a social promotions platform. But it was a real hustle where we both worked at Virgin at the time, and we decided to do, a project on the side. And so for the first 6 months, a lot of the engineering, so I wrote all the code for it, was done after work. So it was like I'd get home from working a pretty decent day. I was head of development, so quite a large team and fairly stressful environment. And then I would jump on the computer and code away to like 1 o'clock at night or later, drinking a lot of Red Bull and Jägermeister and things like that. And so I think when you're young, it doesn't really worry you. You're a founder, you're hustling, you're getting stuff out the door. But, when you do that for a consistent period of time, like, 6, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and you go to work and have a muffin and a coffee for breakfast, you're not going to the gym because, I just wasn't at the time. You sort of start to see this degradation in your health. I think it's quite hard to educate young people about those healthy habits. So that was a lesson that I learned, that, if you're not prioritizing it, then you have this slight degradation in your health. And so it was after that startup that I'd sort of finished that I realized that I was starting to get a lot of visceral fat. So sort of skinny fat man scenario around your organs. It wasn't very healthy, high blood pressure. So those things started to come into my focus, and it became a real, I suppose, challenge. And unfortunately, that happens to a lot of people. It's not until they get, to a situation where it's medically an issue that they actually make change. So I suppose that was the first time I sort of started to see the benefits of health and well-being and healthy habits. Off the back of that, I got a personal trainer and I started going to the gym and doing things like that. And I recognized the benefit of having a coach there as well. So that was another thing that I took away, that, when you're a founder and you're an entrepreneur, you do need help, particularly like coaches, for all sorts of different reasons. But for me, it was just getting fit again.
And founders are really bad at getting help, right? Like, would we have this idea that we can do it all ourselves and then go into burnout, and then it's too late. So when you got your coach, what was that routine like?
Yeah, so changed very quickly because, suddenly you've got some accountability there, which was great. So I was going to the gym quite regularly. I started off quite strong, 5 times a week, from nothing to that. Which I do recommend, because it's that shock to the system that sort of kicks you into gear sometimes. But it was a self-motivation thing that got me to do that. But I think there's like 3 interesting things, and what we talk about with PUML is like, you need not only the self, but you need the social engagement. You need your wife or your friends or your partner, encouraging you, or your work colleagues. So you've got that social pressure as well. And then you also need, or it certainly helps if you have some type of incentivization. That incentivization could be, you're going to go into, spiral out of control because of your health. But it could also be some actual, reward. And so we've tried to combine those 3 things into our platform. So when we're running these or gamifying these challenges, there's always an incentive, there's always a reward, there's always a leaderboard. So you've got your friends, your employees, people you work with around you. And then there's also this idea of goals, so your own goals, where you can try and achieve this stuff. So bringing those three things together, we think that's the best way to sort of help you succeed. And ultimately, that background is what sort of helped me come up with the idea and sort of set up PUML as its own sort of company. And that blockchain piece, again, just to reiterate, it has the incentivification. So we've developed our own fitness currency. So it's like a Qantas reward, but actually it has a price that can move, and it's a global currency that can go anywhere in the world. So super powerful, full transparency. We can't water it down. We can't just keep changing things like other loyalty programs. So there's a real value there. And then the other thing is that data. I'm very passionate about data. And so managing that health record, that you as one of our users, you always own your own data. We just saw recently Garmin get hacked. Fitbit's now been acquired by Google. People still don't seem to understand that data is probably one of the most valuable things that they have, and they give it away so easily. So we're trying to be on the leading edge by saying, actually, you own your own data. We're going to make sure you always do, and we're not going to ever do anything with that data unless we've spoken to you about it, or you've at least opted in. And our users can opt in to sell their data in exchange for our coins again, or our tokens. So they're actually going to benefit from their data.
Yeah, that's really incredible. Companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon have so much personal data, and this whole shift that's happening in the technology sector is the lack of education from the people that are using the platforms, and the ethical debate around who owns the data. And it's pretty obvious that the users own the data. But the platforms weren't set up that way. So the GDPR kicked in, and we're seeing globally that happening. And then we'll see that shift, the power shift happening in the market as people learn more about the value of the data, where it's going, how it's being used and sold. And being able to consent to that, I think, is really incredible and powerful. And with the platform and the challenges, I love that, it's designed taking into account the psychological frameworks of incentivizing, giving a little bit more incentivizing to build micro habits. And physical health and mental health are very, very closely related. And then financial health as well. And that holistic thinking around someone's well-being and how do you continuously improve your quality of life. And mental health, one, it's very hard to talk about, and it's such a taboo topic, which is all the more reason why we need to talk about it. And I want to put a disclaimer in this conversation that when we talk about mental health, we're not talking about clinically diagnosed mental health, which challenges which requires professional medical help. I'm referring more in the context of everyday emotion regulation, dealing with anxiety and stress, and passing depression rather than clinical depression. I think it's really important to make that the difference about the context of this conversation. And being a founder myself, and business owners often can relate to this a lot. And even if you're not a business owner, in a current climate where there is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenges that creates fear, isolation. I feel for our good friends in Melbourne right now in another lockdown. All of these factors that gives us this sense of groundedness sometimes becomes wobbly. And as a result, things started happening, and it doesn't happen every day, and it doesn't happen abruptly. It happens over time. And I can tell a little story about why I'm passionate about this. Is in 2018, I've been in the startup space for a while and build a number of startups. And when I got into this space and started building my startup, I lost a lot of friends. A lot of friends couldn't relate to what I was doing. It didn't fit their model of what they thought I should do, because entrepreneurship is not a real job. And it was more around, go get a real job. Why are you so broke all the time, Naby? Why don't you go get a real job? And the lack of understanding, I was like, who am I? Like what should I do? How do I make these decisions? This is extremely challenging. And I persevered. But the price that I paid in that perseverance isn't something I would do in that particular way. So I had massive anxiety, and I went through this terrible depressive stage, and I asked for help. I asked for help from some of my very, very close friends, and changed a whole range of things in my life. Daily habits, and getting a personal coach, and every day committing to it. And I know it's an everyday commitment. And if you don't do that, there's very easy to slide back into it. And before you know, it's really too late. And we hear about those things. So on the topic of mental health, I want to talk about men's mental health. I think the topic as it is hard for just in general, but for men it's a lot harder. Could you share a little bit about your insight around why it's so hard to have that conversation around men's mental health?
Yeah, I think it is difficult for men generally. And we know statistically something like 60% of men who lack in exercise are more likely to, come up with some sort of diagnosed depression or mental anxiety and things like that. So that's why we think exercise for both men and women is just so valuable. But I think there's also added pressures, particularly with some men. If you're like myself, you're a father as well as a founder, and you're earning money at the same time or providing for a family. There's a certain level of, I suppose, front that you have to put up as a founder as well. So I think stigma is related, particularly to men as well. And, that's why we're quite passionate about our new charity that we're working with, which is livin.org. And their motto is, "It ain't weak to speak." And that's specifically looking at men's, mental health, because statistically, again, the highest number of suicides are men, and they're more likely to actually take it to the next level and be really dramatic at, as a result of what they're going through. And so I think it's one of those things that the more our industry embraces that and helps encourage people to talk about it and to have someone to talk to about mental health, the easier it is. And that's why, we're very passionate about working with those guys and about getting them on the platform, and then combining that with our challenges so that people who, walk a certain number of steps or are getting active can also donate their coins to a charity that has such focus around men's, health and well-being. And, just doing little things like that obviously helps improve your day. Every little bit helps. It's like that idea, you've probably read about that every negative thing that happens in your life, you need at least 3 positive things to help balance it out. So it's those little things that you need to sort of start to think about. I think, again, a lot of the psychology around positive behavior and things like that is lacking in many workplaces, particularly for men again as well. It's a huge gap, but I think we're sort of helping to, start to try and change that, mind piece.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly important conversation to have around men's health and men's mental health, because I blame society, the way we were all brought up, and this gender specific roles that have been assigned. It's okay for girls to express their feelings, but society says no, you're weak if you cry, or it has been taken away from men to express it. And even like within, amongst the boys. And I was having a conversation, I wonder, it was with a podcast that I was doing this week, and the conversation was around a guy who was in a long-term relationship, and the relationship broke down. And when a relationship breaks down, or when you lose something, you go through this grief cycle, and it's a process and it can go for extended periods of time. And he was telling me that in his chat group with all of the guys, he said, you know, hey, we're broken up, blah, blah, blah. And all the guys were like, let's get back on Tinder and you know, let's get back in the game again, blah, 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 blah. There was no compassion, no empathy, no support. But then an interesting thing happened. All of them messaged him individually saying, hey, mate, like, do you need to talk? Are you okay? Like, I'm here for you. So, and that was such an incredible story to hear, because from my perspective, I thought, you know, for a long time that guys have no feelings. They're like dead inside, you know? And this is such a stupid way to think about it, because we're all human beings and we feel the same love, we feel the same joy, we feel the same pain. But for one group, it's okay to express it. And for another group, it's not okay to express it. And I was like, that is pretty amazing that you have that bond and relationship with your mates to be able to talk about that and to provide that support. Imagine if we could remove the taboo around it, and in group conversations, that kind of dialogue changes and the narrative changes, the impact of that in workplace well-being, and future of work, where, you know, we kind of work and life is so intertwined. And I think the older generation suffer from it more, around that acceptance and judgment of, you know, don't be weak, don't cry, that kind of narrative. So I'm super excited about this challenge to draw attention to men's mental health. And if people want to donate and join on this challenge, where should they go?
Yeah, they can just come to our website, puml.io, download the apps there, and you can join the challenge. So we've got a few challenges, and you can donate your coins to Livin directly within the app. And there's also a link out to a My Cause page where, if you're old-fashioned and you still own fiat currency, then you can also donate or accept cash as well. So yeah, look, we're super excited. We'd love to make a bit of an impact towards that. But you know, right now when we talk about mental health, I think it's just affecting everyone so much. And what's interesting about that story is that guy clearly had a really good support structure. I think that's where, you know, corporates need to think more about this, because a lot of support structure with many people comes from their peers at work. You know, it's talking around the cooler, it's, you know, getting the fun sort of chats. I think that's sometimes the difficulty as a founder, is if you're working by yourself or a small team, you don't get that. Whereas what I miss about a corporate is that sort of fun social element. And now everyone is going through that at the moment. They can't go to work in the same way they were. They can't have those close relationships. They can't have that chit chat where, you know, maybe in front of the other boys, it's everyone's like quite bolsterous, but on one-to-one, you are showing more compassion, or you are showing more feelings or empathy. And so that's probably the biggest thing that affects people's mental health as well, is like when you take away that socializing and that human interaction and you're somewhat isolated, you know, people don't hang around for chats on Zoom calls. It's just not there. You've got to really, I think that's probably the biggest thing right now, is you are having all these extra pressures of a pandemic and, you know, job insecurity, people, you know, taking all the toilet paper, whatever it may be. There's just like so much stress going on. And then you're also peeling back that social circle that is just so imperative to your day-to-day healthy sort of activity. So yeah, all of our platforms are combined to sort of bring that social element back. So the leaderboard, you can message each other, you can sort of encourage each other. We have what we call a do it, which is sort of like a positive affirmation. And then we also try and encourage our corporates to do weekly Zoom calls, so that people can be in the same place, again, just exercising and doing something together. It's the best we can do right now, rather than physically being together. But if you strip that away, you've just got your workforce working from home by themselves, and they're doing this monotonous day on day, out of bed, coffee, lounge room, work, bed, you can see how the mental health of both men and women is being severely hit right now.
Absolutely. And it affects not just men and women of a certain age group. It affects everyone across the board, whether you're young or middle age or a 30-year-old or 50-year-old or 60-year-old. You still want that social connection. You still want that sense of security, predictability, and all of those things are really critical. And I want to talk about, how we got together, and there's an exciting challenge that we're launching very soon, which is called the Walk It Off Challenge. And how did we meet, Damien?
I think I just reached out to you on LinkedIn in my hustle style, because I saw a post, I think, about the hustle cover, which I thought was genius to have an insurance company, because the future of work is freelancing, and as a founder, you know what it's all like. It can be very hard to, one, get a home loan, very hard to get insurance, very hard to get income protection, all that type of stuff. So I think I loved what you were doing, and yeah, you're one of the people that accepted my connection.
And I am so glad. And I remember our first conversation, we talked for so long, and there were so many things that we were aligned in terms of value and our approach to building the startup and supporting the entrepreneurs and self-employed people purely came out of my own struggle of being the ultimate gig economy worker pretty much all my life. And there is this perception that gig economy workers are just Uber drivers, which is absolutely not true. Anyone who is self-employed has the same level or similar kinds of financial insecurity around, borrowing money or absorbing the shock of financial crisis or any kind of this risk. And it hasn't been a segment that has been catered really well by the financial services sector. So when we started building it, it was like, what would I want for myself and for my friends that are all entrepreneurs and business owners, and it kind of like organically developed. And for me, it was all around not just looking at it from a siloed perspective, mental, physical, and financial well-being. These are all interconnected. One of those things fall apart, and it has this knock-on effect on all of these other things. And when I met you and I found out what you were doing, and I was like, damn, I wish I thought about this. This is incredible, but there's only so much I can do with my life. I have to dedicate my time into what I want to do. So it seemed like a really amazing, very organic partnership. So I'm super excited that we are doing this. We're launching this Walk It Off Challenge, which goes live on the 4th of September. That's next Friday, right? Isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I would love to do is to encourage the business community in Australia to jump on board, to share it and nominate your friends to join the challenge. And the purpose of this challenge is to have a dialogue. Makes it easy to have that dialogue with your friends and family, to build a bridge, to have this conversation that mental health is real. And it happens, and there is no shame around talking about it. If we can have, one person have that conversation that they were so scared of having with their family or your friend or their partners, I think, that would be amazing, and that would be quite rewarding. And I had many stories about our good friends in Melbourne being in lockdown and not knowing when it's going to be over, right? So being part of a community and being involved in something that's bigger than you feels like you're not alone. What got you excited about Walk It Off Challenge, Damien?
Yeah, I just love the fact that, people are going to be thinking about exercise, healthy behavior, and mental health all at the same time. Because like you say, when you look at that circle there, and we talk about, having this circle of influence, things that you can actually change yourself. Exercise is one of those. I just even like that motto of just walk it off, and then marrying that with ain't weak to speak on the live-in challenge there as well. That we can bring people together at a time that can be quite difficult. And even if you're in Melbourne, we integrate with Fitbit and Garmin and your Apple Watch. So, walking around the house, vacuuming, all of that can contribute to a wider challenge, and you can be a part of it. And there can be something that, you're involved in, even though you're in isolation. And I think that's really getting me excited about it. And also so people know, October is a big month for mental wellness as well. So we're sort of leading up from September into October. So now's the right time to sort of not only think about it, but also do something and hopefully raise some funds as well.
Incredible. And getting, it's not to find out who is the fittest. That's not the intention behind it. And I know there are a lot of runners out there. It's such a trendy thing to do. And a lot of people, got their athleisure wear and they're walking and running every day. It's about doing it as a community thing and walk with your puppy, walk with your friends, walk with your family, and do it as a group. And when you do it together for 30 days, that's a pretty long time to do it consistently. That is definitely going to have lasting impact on your life and your well-being. And hopefully people don't stop after the challenge, right? That would be the holy grail.
Yeah, so our platform is all around cognitive behavioral changes and how do we create healthy habits. The step challenges are a great one. We know they've been around for a while. We're sort of disrupting that industry by just layering some really cool technology to make it all seamless and have a bit more fun with our leaderboards and things like that. But we also have other challenges like heart rate challenges, like sleep challenges, and these micro challenges as well, like just logging your water or your whole foods, things like that. We call a micro challenge a 3-week challenge. So you do one a month, and those little healthy behaviors, we believe in a 12-month period of time, you can have a goal, achieve. And again, it's that incremental change that, in my backstory, that sometimes if you're not thinking about it, you just don't worry about it. But if you're not doing something positive, then in today's environment and society, then there'll be more negative things outweighing the positive things, slowing you down or making you do something else. And again, about founders, it's just not easy to be self-motivated about your health sometimes when your health or your life is your business. So again, it's that social pressure of hopefully we'll get a few in our community, in the startup community that join the Hustle Challenge, and we can help encourage each other and sort of add a level of accountability at least for the month of September.
Yeah, I think that would be really incredible now that winter's over almost. Go off to spring and something to get excited about, and those who can leave the house can leave the house and get their exercise, but also talk about something that's incredibly important and valuable for our communities and society in general. So where do you think the future of well-being is going to go? Like, well-being is such a huge industry. There's all kinds of business solutions that are out there. Like if you look at Peloton, hello, why, how? But it's super expensive product, but it took off massively. So we know that in the next 10 years, people are going to be more mindful of their mental or physical well-being. What do you think is the catalyst for these changes?
Well, yeah, I think technology is driving it. It always has, jumping in different industries. But I think now is a time for technology to really move in health, fitness, and well-being. And that's why we sort of positioned ourselves in this area. We're going to see massive trends of like more of these in-home smart devices. We've got the smart mirrors, like you say, the Peloton stuff where you're doing virtual training. So it's, again, linking the social with real-time streaming, with amazing equipment. We did an accelerator with New York University last year, which was awesome. Yeah. And some of the stuff coming out of there around wearable apparel is just phenomenal. So they have an ECG built in here. You've got real-time blood pressure, heart rate monitoring that is like medical grade, all for the cost of around $400 US. So we're going to see more wearable apparel for, you've sent your kids to school in clothing that may have a certain amount of data coming back on it. And in the workplace, we see this being even stronger, that there'll be more wellness products and smart devices that will ultimately give you more data than you've ever seen before. And through, those buzzwords we know, but through machine learning and artificial intelligence, those data pools will become wider. A little bit when you marry it right now with your DNA, you can only get so much information from your DNA because there's simply not enough, of that data there. Whereas I think with all these new devices coming out and with the technology improvements, we're going to see this huge uplift in data. And from that data, we're going to start to understand so many things, so much more, how the oxytocin is affecting us, the dopamine, all those things will be a lot more interesting technically. And there will be products and services around that. I think for the employees to get the most performant people, and for example, with COVID, they're going to be required from a regulation perspective to now put dedicated time into individuals, okay, whether or not that's a budget or it's, So I think wellness products and services in the corporate are going to increase as well. And that's where we see the future being that, as you marry that work-life scenario, you do need to be across both. Like, I think on our statistics, it's something like, 1 in 5 staff will take time off in a year because of some type of stress or whatever. You're going to see that was in the good days a few years ago. Like, you're going to see that number increasing. So it is really going to start hitting the bottom line for any corporate that is not looking at that. But what we're also excited about is, great wellness packages and, challenges like we run shouldn't just be for enterprise